Welcome, everyone, to a special Halloween bonus episode. Today, we're blending two of our worlds, family twist and horror heals, for a celebration of family, healing, and of course, all things spooky. Kendall and I have always felt that Halloween holds a special kind of magic, one that brings families together and allows us to explore the unexpected ways horror can help us process life's challenges. We're thrilled to have Darin joining us today. He's a true Halloween family man who's kept the spirit of the season alive in his own family, and I know his story will resonate with all of us. So grab some candy corn and settle in for a conversation that's a little bit eerie and a whole lot of heartwarming. Darin, welcome to the show.
All right, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. These conversations that we get to have with people are like the highlights of our weekends. So thank you for kicking off our Saturday with a fun chat.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm excited.
So we're recording this on a lot of our favorite weekend of the year, which is like the weekend that's gearing up for Halloween. Of course, it's always cool when Halloween falls on a Friday or Saturday, but it's a Thursday this year. You and your fam are big into the Halloween spirit, right?
We are. Yeah, big time. Oh, yeah.
What are the plans? Like, I don't know, you're in Florida, right?
Yeah, we're in Florida. So we,
is it trick-or-treating like on Halloween, or like some places do it on different days?
Yeah, it's funny. In our town, like, I feel like every year there's always like a slight threat of people wanting it to be like on the weekend or something. And I'm very much like, oh, I gotta be on Halloween, because that's, for me as a kid. So, but every year the town always puts out, it's on Facebook, some kind of message that's reading on Halloween, October 31st from 6. So that's usually the time frame. Our town is little, so it's starting to grow a little bit, but we're kind of in the downtown area that's a little bit older, but it's got a really cool old neighborhood vibe, if you will. And there's a lot of great neighbors in the neighborhood. So so you're starting to see now everybody's starting to put up their stuff. I was a little worried because the hurricanes came through here. We weren't able to put our decorations out, but we got it forward last weekend and we're ready to go.
Awesome.
Good.
Awesome. So what are the costumes this year?
Yeah, as the kids get older, I have a 13-year-old daughter and a 9-year-old son, so they're starting to get a little more involved in the costume. So each year it gets a little more. We always try to come up with some kind of idea, some kind of theme. So we go to the library all the time. So my son is really into cryptids, and we talk a lot about cryptids. So this year we're going to be doing cryptids. So he's going to be Mothman. I'm going to be a Wendigo. My daughter is going to be a Yeti, and my wife is going to be a Flatwood. So we're kind of like, yeah, putting that all together.
I love when families do like theme costumes, like Kendall and I have done that in the past too. When we go to parties and stuff, we did our first Halloween together. We were actually going to a screening of the Rocky Horror Picture Show, but I was Eddie and he was Frankenfurter.
Oh, that's awesome. It was fun. That's awesome.
Yes, fun.
As the kids get a little older, so we get a little more creepy as they get older, just because, they can kind of understand the concept a little better and not be too afraid. We've done Stranger Things a couple of years too, because that's the big things, but that's kind of, how we kind of started introducing them to scarier side of things.
Well, I'm very interested to hear your story, but what I love, and I think I'm going to sense before we even get into the nitty gritty, is that you mentioned that you're a lifelong horror fan and that horror helped you a lot in your childhood. And I like that you're like flipping the script on that to where it's like, you're still got the horror love going on, but it's like with like, a nice happy family around.
I always felt so weird doing that, because not many talking to people outside of the community or who aren't really, who maybe don't like horror, a little afraid of it. When you start talking to them, you kind of feel a little weird, right? But I always feel like I want to tell people, hey, don't worry, any kind of creepy guy or anything. I'm not scary, I just love it,
Right. That's why we encourage everybody, horror fan or not, to go to a horror convention, because A, they're not scary. I mean, yeah, there's people dressed up in cosplay and stuff like that. But then B, you're really going to get the sense of like what the horror community is all about. And it's nothing but positivity and light.
Oh yeah. Ever since you guys have been talking, I haven't been to one personally. We've been to some other conventions, like we've gone to Power Rangers, some things that are more like kids speed. But when you talk about those conventions, it gets me, really excited, because we have a couple in the area that are, smaller size ones that I like to just kind of, get my feet wet a little bit, check it out,
Trust me, it'll be an experience you'll remember forever. Your first horror con.
Oh man, yeah, I can't wait. I'm going to keep an eye out for them for sure.
All right, so let's rewind and talk about young Darin.
Sounds good. So when I first, really got interested in, or I guess kind of one of those things by accident, right? Kind of a little kid just exploring. When I was a kid, without getting into too many details, my parents were kind of like, they were married for a while I was little, but they had their own issues that they had going on, some issues, and some things where, it kind of took them away from the family a little bit, at times. And there were times when it was better and times when it was worse. When I was little, there was a lot of distractions, I think, going on. So there was a lot of times when I just kind of, explored, maybe I explored some things I shouldn't have, kind of like 6 or 7 years old. But my earliest memories were being by myself in the living room and just, especially like when Friday the 13th would come around and they'd always play. Back then, we didn't have things on demand in the 90s, right? So you just kind of had to tune in. I would just sit there and watch Friday the 13th marathons. Probably what I really started with. I'd go into Nightmare on Elm Street and then, of course, Halloween. So, those three big ones. Anytime there was something on TV, I was tuned in and, with it cover over my head, probably just, staring at the TV, trying not to get too scared. It really spoke to me. And I think as a kid, you're kind of aware of things that are going around you, being like 6, 7, 8, or 9 years old. You don't really grasp everything, but you kind of just feel like there's some things that are off here. There's like, some arguing or some drinking, some weird stuff with the neighbors. And there's some things that are going on that aren't quite right. Just can't quite, understand that as a kid. So I would just kind of immerse myself in horror films, and I'd get scared, but like I think deep down inside I knew that even though these were scary, they weren't real. So it was kind of like a fantasy world for me, where I didn't have to focus on all the noise around me. It was like, let me go and watch another marathon, get a little scared, but know that this isn't gonna be real, kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, I think kids are very perceptive, whether they know exactly what's going on, maybe not, but they definitely have a good sense of like, something right here,
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny too, because I think that I have a strained relationship with my mom. I don't even know where she is. I talk to her at this point. Talk to my dad, and he's really come around. He lives in Michigan, and he's got a good life going on now. My mom, on the other hand, I can't say the same thing for her. It's been, very tragic the way that her life has turned out. But I think that if I had a conversation now with them and told them like about my love for horror and stuff, they probably wouldn't even really know about it. They wouldn't really understand, just because, I don't know, it was just me by myself, it was me taking that all in. So they would probably we know you like Halloween, but we didn't know you were, into horror like that. So it was like one of those quiet things. I don't even think I knew how much it was doing for me until I became older, because now, as a dad, I always, promised myself that, I would, my wife would raise their kids, better than, how I was raised, and I'd always be there for them, kind of thing. I just started realizing, oh man, like horror films and horror in general, and just like scary and the macabre, it was a lot more important in my life than I really realized. And I think that's why I do Halloween so big too, because I knew how important it was for me. And I knew that was my escape. We could all dress up and be creative, and we could just go have a great time. And in Michigan, it was like, that beautiful fall weather and the leaves were falling. It just was always something it was warm to me. Try fast forward to when you're an adult and, had a past life where we were more involved in church, which we're not anymore, but try, going there and explaining in that setting that, you're a big horror fan, but I knew inside, what it was, what it had done for me, and how it had kind of, saved me at times. I needed it.
It's funny. I can relate at some level. I mean, not because I had like a bad situation, growing up, except that my mother became really ill when I was 6 and died when I was 10. And I don't know how I came to the realization, but I remember being like probably 7 or 8. And my dad, he knew how much I loved horror films. And he was like, why? Like what, you know what I mean? Like he loved them too, but he was like, what's the appeal for you? And I always used to say, well, if so-and-so, a character can survive their situation, then mom can, you know what I mean? Or we'll all come out of this okay. Now, I mean, that was a little delusional because my mother did die, but at the same time, I thought of horror as giving me some resilience. So yeah, it was, and when I explained that to my dad, he's like, let's watch more. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, and I think for me, like I I always every year I watch horror throughout obviously all throughout the year. Like, you see those memes about, people only watching horror during, Halloween, and here we are up here on our pedestal saying, "Oh, we watch it all year long." I always laugh about that. But especially at this time, getting the kids involved, even though, we've kind of dipped our toes a little bit in it, but we're trying to not be my son got a little scared, so we're not trying to be, rush anything too fast. But when I sit down and watch some of these movies and I watch, like I'll put on, of course, Halloween, and I'll put on like Halloween 4 and 5. I can almost like, put myself back in that time when I was like sitting there, and it gives me, a sense of comfort. I remember being that little boy, sitting there and having that time of comfort when there was a lot of chaos going around. And it's just like it's a big time nostalgia thing, and that's I think that's why I love Halloween so much too, because I just remember like, how much I look forward to that. And it's just like when we're out passing candy out, because the yard, I got all the animatronics up now, and we're gonna have people kind of walk through, and I in-laws come over and help pass out candy. And we just figured like be in the house, the Halloween house, we gotta have something big. But I just love seeing all the families and kids come up, and then they come in all the shapes and sizes, right, and all different. You can tell, you can tell. I'll see some of those kids who come up with parents who maybe look like my mom, probably, and you just, I don't know, my heart just goes out. And I'm like, this is the time when we can, connect, and just like this kid is dressed up and who knows what's going on in their life. But for this night, at least we can, kind of come together and share something spooky and walk by these animatronics and have some good candy.
when you think about it, what other holiday, aside from maybe people caroling together as a family, which probably doesn't happen very much anymore. When you think about
Right.
it, when else on a holiday would a family get to even go out, you know what I mean, into the community together like that?
Right, exactly. Yeah. And as much as I love my neighbors here, the four around me, I know them, but we've lived here since 2009. We walk down the street and there's like people that I don't quite know who've lived here for a long time. But we do see them on Halloween, like you said. So yeah, it's rare to get out, but Halloween, and I got the mentality too that like, I don't really care. Like there's, some teenagers that live a couple streets over, they come over barely dressed up or whatever. It's like, but they're coming over to, see, and they know there's some good candy. So I'm like, whatever, everybody come, as long as I have some candy, we'll pass it out. So, but I just remember it. Like I remember doing that and then going home and just dumping my bag out, and probably I turned on something spooky, whether it was, a movie or like, the Munsters if it was on TV or something, and just really enjoying that night and being a core memory for me.
You just had me flash back to a memory of like when you said the dumping out the candy. Like I remember, who knows how old I was, but it was traditionally we always had, my dad always made chili on Halloween, so we would come home and have chili. But this particular year, I guess some of the neighbors were over and they were watching Motel Hell. And so I was kind of like behind the couch, like peeking out a little bit because it was, like it was a little creepy for me. But yeah, that's some
That's
great
awesome.
Halloween memories.
That's cool.
Yeah.
When you guys do chili. I forgot to mention that my wife does that too every year. She always makes chili, and then she'll make some cornbread out of these. We have these skull pans, and they're like little skull cornbread. So yeah, we invite friends over sometimes, but eventually, as the kids get older, I'd love to have a party or something.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, Corey, I don't like the combination of Motel Hell with chili like that. Like,
Yeah.
like that, like the next time we either eat chili or watch Motel Hell, all I'm going to be thinking about is floating. Anyway, yeah, just a little bit. I mean, as a child, I would have been like, no, I'm out. I'm not eating that stuff.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
funny.
exactly.
Didn't make that correlation, but
Yeah,
I didn't really either.
because there's a lot of dismemberment going on in that.
Yeah. Oh,
That
all that
film.
meaty chili.
Yeah,
yeah.
no. Well, even my
That's really
tofu
funny.
would have a weird connotation, I'm afraid.
Chewiness.
Yep, yep. I'm good.
That's hilarious.
So Darin, at what age did you start to realize that like, oh wow, these horror movies really like kind of helped me, kind of saved me?
I think maybe in my teenage years, but I think that it started to kind of like come to me that that's what was going on. But I think that when I became an adult. And my wife and I got married pretty young. So I was like 20 when we got married, and we waited to have kids for a little while. But, once I started becoming an adult and, having kids, I was like trying to just figure out why I was always so drawn to horror, and I was just, especially being like somebody who, I mean, to be honest, I wouldn't hurt a fly. I'm just like really like, gentle spirited, but I just love horror. I was always trying to figure out what is it? I just kept coming back to it. Always would bring me back to those memories being a kid, and now like, watching my kids grow up too. It hits home even closer now. I just kept going back to those memories and almost reliving like those good times of me, watching those movies together or by myself, and then sometimes watching it by myself, but also sharing it with my wife and my kids. I started to realize that that this is really why I love it so much. When I became an adult, I just tried to connect the dots. Then I finally figured that out, because like I told you before, talking to people who aren't really in horror, and I'm sure you guys know too, that like sometimes it's hard to explain, why you love it so much. Well, that's violent, or that's, scary, or, that's demonic possession. Why are you into that? And, at the end of the day, it's just because I remember, how it took me away from, some of the things that I had going on. And because it's easy to remember the bad, especially when I got into my teenage years and mom really, had a rough time and got really bad. It's, easy to remember that stuff, but it would be easy to remember us, being evicted from our home or, losing our car, all this bad stuff. But I choose to go back to those memories of me, sitting in front of the TV, scared, but going to bed, covering my head, hoping that, Freddie didn't come, at night. That's my biggest fear, by the way, was that was going to become real.
It's interesting. I haven't thought of this in a while, but we need to have Jimmy, my friend from growing up. We need to have him on the show, because when I think about it, after my mother passed away and my father struggled with alcoholism, when I'd be upset about that, I'd go over to my best friend Jimmy's house and he would know I was upset. And even he would be like, hey, let's watch Halloween, or let's watch, you know what I mean? Like even then he was making, I'm sure subconsciously, making that connection for me and saying, you know what, we love this and let's watch another one. I haven't thought about it in that respect.
Man, yeah. That's great. Like he was kind of in tune to that you
For
needed
sure.
that. Yeah.
Well, and I would imagine like Jimmy probably needed a little bit too, because he had, he kind of had a crazy household situation too. So it was probably something where you guys could escape together.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, because we didn't love his stepfather. Let's say that.
Yeah.
That's as much as I should say. But yeah, his stepdad wasn't great. So whether he was coming to my house to escape or I was going to his house to escape, we kind of had the same method in our madness. So
No, having Jimmy on a podcast though is going to be like herding cats.
it is.
Oh, really?
You don't know which. Oh yeah, he's hilarious, but like he is going to go off in
20
Oh my God.
tangents.
and we would definitely have to cut out some of the stuff that
Yeah.
comes out of his.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We'll be canceled if we.
That's- That's hilarious.
But
I typically tend to be kind of a little more of an introvert, and I like people, but like my wife is sometimes the leader, and she'll be the one that really strikes up conversation. I will say, if you get me on the topic of horror, like I just sometimes get like a little bit giddy, and like I just start talking, and I'm like, man, I got to slow myself talking a little too much here. Yeah, I'm just talking really fast. And I told you guys we go to the library, and we have some really good friends over there some that we've known for a long time, and some that we've become close with over the other recent years. And two of them, Shane and Sally, they're really into horror too. So like, well, if we don't see them for a little while, we try to go at least, once a week or something. I'll always go to the DVDs and I'll check out, different horror films, or I'll talk to them and they'll tell me, hey, you need to check this out. Sometimes they'll have something ready for me, like they busted out, I think it was House's October Bill. I hadn't seen that yet. And they had it there and had it ready for me. But we went last time and we started talking to Sally, and I realized afterwards, I told my wife, probably should have tapped me because I was like, talking super fast and like talking a little loud for the library and just kind of going a mile a minute. But, it's just something we connect on. So somebody wants to get me talking, I guess they can talk to me about that or football, because that was the other thing that I loved as a kid.
Well, Shout out to Corey's cousin Sean and his fiance Michelle. They used to live near us, and when they lived near us, they would come over a lot. And that's something all four of us love is horror. We miss them because they're not physically here, but they still send us recommendations and we send them recommendations. And then they live in Prague now. So, they're not around the corner. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that I thank, Shane and Sally enough sometimes. I'm like, for showing me stuff. So yeah, shout out to them too, because they really, they really keep me connected with things. And it's fun just to talk to friends.
Well, it just so happens that, and they didn't plan this, but they have a beautiful apartment, but on the first floor of the apartment building is a horror themed pub.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
No way.
I know.
Oh, do they have like props and stuff in there?
Props and posters and memorabilia. Yes. They sent us some videos and stuff that we haven't shared on social yet, but we'll have to do it, in conjunction with this or connection to this episode.
That's so cool.
Was your wife into horror and Halloween when you met, or was that your influence?
No, she's got some similar stories where, she grew up in the church a lot, so not that like, it's strict or anything for her, but I just don't think that she was, had as many, opportunities to, watch horror or, her parents probably kept a better eye on her than mine. So, I got to monitor things more closely, but she had, friends that she would go to and they'd show her. She remembers just like me watching the original It, with a friend, and being really scared about that. But she really was great about, I think she could also just sense without me really saying it that, that I loved horror, and she just kind of, hopped on board with me, and she gets a little, and she would admit it too, she gets a little scared sometimes, but she'll just be a good sport there with her blanket, like this, and she'll try to hang in there. But she definitely has been, my biggest support, in life, and she's been there for me through, thick and thin. So it's just really nice that she's really grown to love it as much too, and especially Halloween. Like, she's done all this behind me. She does the indoor stuff here, and she does all that, and then she even helps me outside too. And we got a couple 12-foot animatronics that I need help with, and she just jumps right in. And I think my kids, even though like, they, some of it spooks them out a little bit, like the movies, especially, they know that dad, loves Halloween and spooky, and they're always just trying to be ultra supportive of it. So I really, appreciate their support and love.
Thank you for tuning into this Halloween special. Hearing stories like Darin really brings home why we love both Family Twist and Horror Heals. We may be talking about monsters and mayhem, but at the heart of it, it's all about connection, resilience, and finding light even in the darkest places. Family Twist listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, we'd love for you to check out Horror Heals, where we dive in deeper into how horror brings people together and supports healing in powerful and unexpected ways. From Kendall and me, happy Halloween. May it be filled with treats, no tricks, and a little bit of horror magic. The Family Twist podcast is presented by Savoir Faire Marketing Communications, produced by How the Cow Ate the Cabbage LLC, and features original music by Cosmic Afterthoughts.